In 1975, Tom Jones stepped on stage in Las Vegas, wearing a new outfit and singing a song nobody knew. What happened next shocked everyone. The crowd started booing. People threw drinks. Some even walked out. Security had to escort him away, as the angry crowd chanted, "Go home!" Tom was so upset, he didn't perform for 6 months after. But the worst part? The real reason they hated him wasn't his singing at all. It was something much darker that he kept secret for 48 years. Tom Jones was born on June 7, 1940, in a small town called Treforest, near Pontypridd in South Wales. His father worked deep underground as a coal miner, like many men in their community, and his mother kept the home running. Life was tough, but close-knit. Music was part of the culture, and even as a boy, Tom seemed to carry that spirit in his voice. His father once hoped he'd follow in his footsteps and work in the mines, but Tom's future would turn out very different. At age 12, everything changed. Tom got tuberculosis, a serious illness at the time. He had to spend 2 years in bed, unable to go outside or live like a normal kid. He later said it was the worst time of his life. But in that lonely bedroom, something else started to grow: his love for music. With not much else to do, he listened to the radio day after day. He heard songs from American blues and rock and roll artists like Little Richard and Elvis Presley. Their sound grabbed him. He started to feel the kind of music he would one day sing himself. When he finally returned to school, Tom wasn't too interested in lessons or sports, but he was already standing out for another reason: his voice. At assemblies, he sang so loudly and passionately that teachers had to tell him to tone it down. One music teacher even asked why he was singing the Lord's Prayer like a gospel singer. It was clear he was doing something different, something bold, and people noticed. By the time he was 16, he left school for good, ready to chase the dream that had been growing in him for years. Tom Jones married his high school sweetheart, Linda Trenchard, in March 1957. They were both just 16 and already expecting their son, Mark. But their love story started long before that. Tom met Linda when they were just 8 years old, and he was smitten right away. He chased after her for years until she finally agreed to go out with him when she was 15. Their marriage lasted nearly 6 decades, all the way until Linda's death in 2016. She was 75 and had battled cancer 3 times. Through it all, they stayed together. Still, Tom was open about being unfaithful during his rise to fame. At the height of his career, he admitted to sleeping with hundreds of women every year while touring. In an interview, he said the affairs were never discussed. Linda never confronted him. "She loves being married to me, and I love being married to her," he said. Tom's journey into music began in 1963, when he became the lead singer of a Welsh beat group called Tommy Scott and the Senators. He got the offer after the band's original singer quit, and they needed someone new. A bass player remembered Tom performing at a local pub and invited him to join. Tom agreed, for just a few pounds and some beer. They started small, playing working-class venues across South Wales. At first, they were managed by 2 locals and even worked with the famous producer Joe Meek, but things didn't take off. They returned to Wales disappointed. Then came the turning point. A manager named Gordon Mills, also from South Wales, saw Tom perform one night in a club and immediately saw his potential. He took Tom to London and gave him a new name, Tom Jones, inspired by the hit movie of the same name. The band also got a makeover, changing names from the Senators to the Playboys, and eventually the Squires. Vernon Hopkins, the bass player who brought Tom in, stayed close to him for years, until a falling out in 1969 when Mills fired Hopkins. Those early years in London were rough. Tom and the band lived in a rundown flat in Notting Hill, crammed together with barely enough money to eat. At one point, they came up with a desperate plan to get food. They found a restaurant with a big enough bathroom window to escape through. They'd eat, sneak out the back, and run. Things got so bad that Tom even thought about ending it all. But he pushed through. Years later, he'd be worth over $250 million. But back then, the struggle was real, and it shaped him. In 2017, Tom spoke about another part of his early career, one that hadn't been public before. At the time, the Harvey Weinstein scandal was making headlines, and Tom shared that sexual harassment wasn't just a problem in Hollywood. It happened in the music world too, to both women and men. In an interview, he admitted someone once tried something with him early in his career. "It wasn't bad," he said. "Just someone tried to pull, and I said, 'No, thank you.'" He didn't name names, but his former bandmate Vernon once described a disturbing moment with producer Joe Meek. According to Vernon, Tom once ran out of Meek's place shouting that he'd been groped. Tom later said the experience made him feel terrible, but he just walked away and avoided the person after that. In 1964, a man named Gordon Mills walked into a small nightclub in Wales. He wasn't a big name in music, just a songwriter with a few hits to his name. But that night, he saw something special. On stage was a young Welsh singer named Thomas Jones Woodward, performing under the name Tommy Scott with his band, the Senators. Mills saw raw power in the way the 24-year-old sang. He wasn't polished, but there was something magnetic about him. Right away, Mills had a vision. He convinced the young singer to drop his teen club image, dress sharp in a tuxedo, and go by a new name, Tom Jones. The name was borrowed from a popular film, but it fit the man perfectly. Mills also noticed how older women reacted to Jones. They didn't just enjoy the music, they wanted to be close to him. That sex appeal would become a major part of Tom Jones's image. Soon after, Mills landed him a deal with Decca Records. Jones's first single, Chills and Fever, came out in August 1964. It should have been a big moment, but it wasn't. The recording process was messy. The original producer, Joe Meek, made some versions that never got released. When Jones finally recorded the official version, the label brought in studio musicians to fix what they felt the band couldn't pull off. The final track was loud and full of energy, but it didn't connect. Critics called it too polished. Worse, the single didn't chart at all. For a moment, it looked like Tom Jones might fade before he ever got started. But then came It's Not Unusual. This second single changed everything. The song, written by Mills and Les Reed, wasn't even meant for him at first. It was offered to Sandy Shaw, a rising star at the time. But she believed in Jones's talent and gave him the chance to record it instead. It was bold, brash, and catchy. The BBC refused to play it. They thought Jones sounded too sexy. But a pirate radio station, Radio Caroline, played it non-stop. That risky exposure worked. The song exploded. By March 1965, just a month after release, It's Not Unusual hit #1 in the UK. When it reached the US in April, it climbed to number 10 on the Billboard charts. Suddenly, Tom Jones wasn't just a Welsh singer in a tuxedo, he was a global sensation. Riding the wave, Mills quickly got him back into the studio. They released his first album, Along Came Jones, in June 1965. It mixed covers with his breakout hit and reached number 11 in the UK. His next single, Once Upon a Time, didn't hit as hard. It peaked at number 32, but it kept his name out there. Then came With These Hands, a tender cover of an old ballad. It didn't crack the top 10 either, but it performed better and showed his range as a singer. In 1965, Tom Jones was asked to record the song What's New Pussycat for a movie with Peter Sellers and Woody Allen. At first, he didn't want to do it. He thought the song was strange and not really his style. Jones wanted to sing soul music like Wilson Pickett or Otis Redding, not a quirky pop tune. He even said, "Christ, what the bloody hell do they want me to sing this for?" But Burt Bacharach, the famous composer, really wanted Jones to sing it. He told him, "I need a big voice for this crazy song. It's a crazy film, and I need a voice of authority." Eventually, Jones agreed. When he recorded it, he gave it everything he had. His powerful voice turned the odd little song into a huge hit. It reached number 3 on the Billboard charts and stayed there for 12 weeks. People loved it, and it became one of his signature songs. That same year, Jones got another big opportunity. He was asked to sing the theme song for the new James Bond movie, Thunderball. It wasn't supposed to happen that way at first. The producers had already picked another song called Mr. Kiss Kiss, Bang Bang, and 2 singers had recorded it. But the studio insisted the song must include the word Thunderball, so they had to write a new one quickly. Jones recorded it under pressure, and during the final take, he sang a long, high note with so much force that he said he nearly passed out. "I closed my eyes and held the note so long. When I opened them, the room was spinning," he said later. The song became another hit, and along with What's New Pussycat and It's Not Unusual, it helped him stand out in the British invasion. While many British acts were becoming popular in America, Jones's strong, deep voice gave him a unique place in the crowd. In 1966, his rising fame led to a big win. He received the Grammy Award for Best New Artist. This was a big deal. It meant he wasn't just another pop singer riding a trend. He had real talent. And now he had recognition in America too. By then, Jones had proven he could handle many styles, from pop to film themes to rhythm and blues. His manager, Gordon Mills, wanted him to be more than a flashy star. He was planning for the long term, and the Grammy helped open even more doors, especially in America, where Jones would soon begin performing in Las Vegas. But not everyone loved his sexy image. Some people thought his performances were too wild, especially when women in the audience threw underwear on stage. His manager knew that if Jones wanted a lasting career, he'd need to change that image. So in 1966, they tried something new. Jones recorded a softer, emotional country song called Green, Green Grass of Home. It showed a different side of him, more heartfelt, more serious. It was a big hit, reaching number 1 in the UK and bringing him back into the American charts too. 2 years later, he released Delilah, another dramatic song with a dark story. Even though it was about jealousy and murder, people loved it. The melody and the way Jones sang it made it unforgettable. It hit number 2 in the UK and became one of his most famous performances. These songs helped change how people saw him. He was no longer just a heartthrob, he was a real artist with range and depth. The success of this new image led to even bigger things. In 1969, he got his own TV show called This Is Tom Jones. The show ran from 1969 to 1971 and aired both in the UK and the United States at the same time. It wasn't just popular, it was a big deal. Jones wasn't only the host, his performances were strong enough to get him nominated for a Golden Globe. He was being paid a massive $9 million per season, which was almost unheard of back then. The show became famous for its incredible guest list. Big names like The Who, Janis Joplin, Cher, Stevie Wonder, Nancy Sinatra, Peter Sellers, and Ella Fitzgerald all appeared. The first season had 15 episodes filled with music and energy, making the show something people had never seen before on TV. While his show was making waves, Jones also started performing in Las Vegas. He went from being the son of a Welsh coal miner to one of the city's biggest stars. His first 18-month residency was a huge hit. He then moved on to bigger stages, including the International and eventually Caesar's Palace. By 1974, he had become such a fixture in Vegas that Elvis Presley introduced him during one of his own shows. Elvis told the crowd, "He's my favorite singer, one of the greatest performers I've ever seen." Fans couldn't get enough. At a concert in 1990, some people even joked they needed binoculars just to see his famous dance moves up close. For many, it didn't matter if he sang or not. They just loved his energy. His shows were known for their wild excitement and strong musical talent, which kept people coming back for years. Jones also became known for something unexpected. Women started throwing their underwear at him during concerts. It all started in 1968 at the Copacabana in New York. He was sweating during a show, and some women gave him napkins to wipe his face. Then, one woman took it a step further and handed him her underwear. The story made the newspapers the next day, and the trend caught on. When Jones arrived in Vegas later that year, it escalated. Fans even began tossing room keys onto the stage. Over time, he collected so much lingerie that people joked he could open his own Victoria's Secret store. Even in the 1990s, fans still talked about it. At one concert, a woman laughed and said it would be funny if someone threw underwear on stage, and admitted she had thought about doing it herself. During these years, Jones also formed a deep friendship with Elvis Presley. They first met in 1965 at Paramount Studios, but their bond grew stronger in Las Vegas. Elvis didn't often spend time with other entertainers, but he and Tom clicked right away. They would hang out, talk music, and sometimes stay up all night playing guitar and singing together in private. One time, after a show, Jones was taking a shower in his hotel room when Elvis showed up unannounced with a new song he wanted to share. Even Elvis's wife, Priscilla, noticed how different and happy he seemed when he was with Jones. She said it was clear Tom really understood Elvis musically, and that made a big difference. But music wasn't the only thing on his mind. In 1970, when he was at the top of his fame, Jones and Mills launched their own company, MAM Records. It wasn't just a label, it was a bold move into the business side of music. Their first release was a hit, Dave Edmunds' "I Hear You Knocking." From there, they signed rising stars like Gilbert O'Sullivan, who gave the label its first big album in 1971. More success followed with artists like Lindsay DePaul and Engelbert Humperdinck. MAM didn't stop with music. They also invested in slot machines and airlines, showing that Jones wasn't just a singer, he was a businessman too. By the late 1970s, though, things began to change. American labels started taking over the market. MAM lost its edge and was eventually sold to Chrysalis Records in the 1980s. Today, its catalog is owned by BMG. Tom Jones was not just famous for his music, but also for his many affairs with well-known women. One of the most talked about was with Marjorie Wallace, who had just been crowned Miss World in 1973. She was only 19 when they met backstage at the London Palladium. Things moved fast, and by the next month, Tom had bought matching bracelets for both Wallace and his wife Linda, whose birthdays were just days apart. The affair turned into a public scandal when the press caught Tom and Wallace kissing on a beach in Barbados during a Miss World TV special. The photos caused Wallace to lose her crown, and the situation got even messier when it came out she was engaged to American race car driver Peter Revson. Eventually, Tom ended the relationship suddenly after learning that Linda was about to find out. Heartbroken, Wallace overdosed on sleeping pills and needed dialysis to recover. She always said it wasn't a suicide attempt, but the experience left her deeply shaken. What began as a moment of fame had turned into something painful and tragic. Tom's affairs weren't rare. In fact, they were constant. At the height of his fame in the 60s and 70s, he once admitted to sleeping with around 250 women a year. He even had a special dressing room set up just for meeting groupies. His publicist once said that Tom was never known for being faithful, right from the start. Of course, this took a toll on his marriage. Linda found out about his affair with Mary Wilson from the Supremes, and the confrontation was explosive. Tom later said that she physically lashed out at him, and he just stood there and took it. Eventually, they came to an unspoken understanding. When he was on tour, they didn't talk about what he was doing. Still, Tom claimed it wasn't an open marriage, and Linda had her limits. In one interview, he joked that if he crossed the line, she would hurt him, and not in a place he'd want to be hurt. Somehow, despite everything, they found a way to stay together. In 1987, while on tour in the U.S., Tom had a brief fling with model Catherine Berkery. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son, Jonathan, the following year. Tom denied being the father, and it turned into a long legal fight. A court-ordered DNA test proved he was Jonathan's father, and in 1989, a judge made it official. Tom agreed to pay child support and cover the cost of private schooling. Still, he never met his son. He said he felt trapped by the situation and kept his distance. For years, he wouldn't even talk about it. It wasn't until 2008 that he finally admitted the court had been right all along. By that time, Jonathan was 23 and publicly begged just to meet his father once. "Just to hear him say my name would be so cool," he said. But Tom stayed silent, and Jonathan never got that moment. Through it all, Linda stayed. She and Tom had been together since they were kids growing up in Pontypridd, South Wales. They started dating when they were 15 and got married at 16, just before their son Mark was born. Linda rarely traveled with him and preferred to stay home, far from the spotlight. She put up with a lot, and Tom never pretended otherwise. He often said she was the love of his life, the one person who always grounded him. She once told him, "I married Thomas Woodward, so don't try that Tom Jones bullshit with me." That was her way of keeping him humble. When she died of lung cancer in 2016, Tom was crushed. He sold their Los Angeles home, just as she had asked, and moved back to London. When someone asked if he would ever marry again, he said no, because there could never be history like the one he had with her. By the mid-1970s, Tom Jones was in a strange spot. He was still world famous, but his music wasn't connecting the way it used to. In 1977, he had a surprising hit on the U.S. country charts with "Say You'll Stay Until Tomorrow." It reached #1 for a week in February and made it to number 15 on the pop charts. But in the UK, it barely made a dent. That song would be his last major hit for nearly 10 years. It was hard to believe. Just a decade earlier, Jones had been one of the biggest stars in the world. Now, people mostly saw him as a Vegas act, something he didn't like at all. He once said, "I only ever played 2-week residencies maybe 4 times a year, but it was reported like I was always bloody there." That image stuck, and it didn't help him. By the early 1980s, his flashy outfits and big TV shows were gone. Some critics even called him an old war horse, singing sentimental songs that only appealed to American country fans. Then, in 1986, his longtime manager Gordon Mills died. Mills had discovered Tom in a small club in Wales and helped build everything from the ground up. He even shaped Tom's breakthrough hit, "It's Not Unusual." When Mills passed away, it was more than a personal loss. It was the end of the man who had guided his entire career. Tom made a risky move. He handed control of his career to his 29-year-old son, Mark. Most people in the industry thought it was a terrible idea. Mark had little experience, but he saw the problem clearly. His father's look and style had become a joke. "What we had to do was strip everything back," Mark said later. So they took a huge gamble. They canceled the steady Vegas shows that had kept the money coming in for years. They chose reinvention instead of safety. That decision paid off. In 1988, a British electronic group called Art of Noise saw Tom perform Prince's Kiss on TV. His version was raw, bold, and full of energy. They reached out and asked if he wanted to record it with them. The result was a funky, wild reimagining of the song. When it came out in October, it took off. The song hit number 5 in the UK, doing even better than Prince's original there, and topped the charts in Spain and New Zealand. The music video, with Tom's new look and sound, won an MTV award. Young fans who had never seen him in his prime suddenly paid attention. Mark later said, "What Kiss did, it removed anybody that was iffy about Tom Jones. You either got it or you didn't." For a 48-year-old singer who had been pushed aside by the pop world, it was a powerful comeback. More than that, it showed he could still surprise people. In 1993, Tom Jones surprised everyone by signing with Interscope Records. At 54, when many of his peers were fading from the spotlight, he released a bold new album called The Lead and How to Swing It. The first single, If I Only Knew, climbed to number 11 on the UK charts. It wasn't just a hit, it was a statement. When Jones performed it at the 1994 MTV Europe Music Awards, he wasn't just an old-school guest, he was the host, winning over a crowd much younger than his original fans. The album itself was unexpected. Jones teamed up with artists like Teddy Riley, Flood, and Jeff Lynne, blending old-school power with modern sound. He launched the album with a show at the House of Blues, dialing back the Vegas glam to spotlight his voice and energy. Some critics felt the production tried too hard to sound current, but most agreed. Jones still knew how to entertain. He moved between his new songs and classics like It's Not Unusual with ease. Then came Reload in 1999. This was more than a comeback, it was a phenomenon. The album shot to number 1 in the UK not once but twice, in 1999 and again in 2000. It sold over 4 million copies worldwide, with 5 UK top 40 singles. What made it special was the format, 15 duets with artists from every corner of the music world. Jones sang with Robbie Williams, Van Morrison, the Stereophonics, and more. Each duet was recorded in the other artist's comfort zone, giving the album a fresh, authentic sound. The biggest hit was Sex Bomb, a high-energy track with producer Moose T. It reached number 3 in the UK and even showed up in an episode of The Simpsons. Reload didn't just bring Jones back, it made him cool again. He wasn't just a legend, he was a hitmaker once more, with platinum records in 10 countries. While all this was happening, Jones also showed his sense of humor. In 1996, he appeared as himself in Tim Burton's wild sci-fi comedy Mars Attacks. In the movie, aliens attack during his performance, and he somehow survives the chaos, even flying a plane to help others escape. The role was playful and over-the-top, but also smart. It poked fun at his Vegas image, while reminding people how iconic he really was. Surrounded by stars like Jack Nicholson, Glenn Close, and Danny DeVito, Jones stood out, and critics noticed. Even in his 60s, Jones wasn't done evolving. In 2006, just weeks after being knighted by Queen Elizabeth II, he teamed up with electronic music producer Chicane for the song Stoned in Love. The track entered the UK charts at number 42, shot up to number 8 in its second week, and peaked at number 7. It was another unexpected move, and another success. Chicane had been looking for a singer who could hit powerful high notes without falsetto. He considered several Welsh vocalists, but chose Jones. His performance was different, soft and subtle in the verses, explosive in the chorus. Some people didn't even recognize his voice at first, but Jones knew the song was strong the moment he heard it. He called it a proper song, not just trendy, but well-written and real. He promoted it with live TV appearances, including Top of the Pops and Friday Night with Jonathan Ross, proving once again that he wasn't just surviving the decades, he was thriving in them.